Hello there, welcome to Conflict News 2042. Since Saturday, we've been trying to keep you updated about the ongoing war between Israel and Palestinian armed groups. We discussed the likely participation of groups based in Syria and Lebanon in this war. Now, a very major development that Syria seems to be considering involvement in this war. Hezbollah already involved to some extent. The incident happened on Syria-Israel border just 2 hours ago. Details for you in this video. Secondly, while Arab countries don't want to support Palestine, Hamas publicly, there is overwhelming support for Hamas in Arab countries. People support Palestinians. A big rally was held in a neighboring country of Israel just a few hours ago. Thousands attended the rally in support of Palestine. Thirdly, Hamas is gearing up for a big show on Friday. What will happen on Friday? What does Hamas want? Firstly, viewers, Syria-Israel border. We know that Syria, Israel, they have been involved in border conflict for years. Golan Heights, disputed territory between Syria and Israel, like Shabba Farm is disputed between Israel and Lebanon. And now when Hamas and Hamas means groups based in Gaza and Israeli defense forces are involved in fighting, we're seeing pressure upon Israel on its northern border. Northern border means Israeli border with Syria and Lebanon. Hezbollah became involved to some extent because Hezbollah has not officially confirming its involvement in the war so far. Though we have seen attacks on Israeli controlled territories from Lebanon on Sunday and on Monday. We saw that Shalomi was hit in Israel from Lebanon. A tank was hit from Hezbollah, by Hezbollah in Israel today. Yesterday, some two barracks of Israeli military were hit. So while Hezbollah is confirming that it has carried out these attacks, it is not confirming that it has joined the war. No large-scale war between Hezbollah and Israeli forces on the border. But Hezbollah is firing warning shots. So we are waiting for Syria. What will Syria do? Because as we discussed in previous videos, that in this region, Palestinians could get military support from Iran. And that support would be through Lebanon, through Syria. Iran from day one supporting Palestine. It says it is not part of the war. It did not plan the attack which Hamas carried out on Israel-controlled settlements on Saturday. But it says that it supports the attacks carried out by Hamas fighters. Iran has its proxies in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon. Now, around 2 hours ago, mortar shells were fired from Syria into Israel in Golan Heights, disputed territory under the control of Israeli forces. Mortars were fired, some were intercepted, some could not be intercepted. Israeli military has confirmed this mortar firing into its territory from Syria. In response, now Israeli military has launched artillery strikes. Drone strikes are also being conducted on Syrian territory, border territory, not Damascus, but border territory, border areas, from where these mortar shells were fired around 2 hours ago. So now we're seeing a situation on Israeli northern border. Hezbollah from Lebanon and groups from Syria, they are firing warning shots. Question is, why are these warning shots being fired? Do these groups want to launch a full-scale war on Israel from their countries? Well, these groups based in Syria and Lebanon, they don't want a ground offensive, Israeli ground offensive on Gaza. Hamas carried out attacks on Israelis. Now, Israeli Defense Force conducting airstrikes, fighting still ongoing in kibbutz, in settlements to the east and north of Gaza. No ground invasion of Gaza so far, but Israel is saying it will carry out the ground invasion, that its forces will enter Gaza and Hamas will be finished forever. So that is why warning shots are being fired from the north, from Syria and from Lebanon. Groups based there, Iran behind them, sending a message to Israel that if Israel decided to go ahead with ground offensive on Gaza, or if strikes continue on Gaza, then there could be attack on Israel from Syria and from Lebanon. Now, this development is not surprising. Not surprising at all. Everyone knew that if this war expanded, the countries involved would be Lebanon and Syria, Iran indirectly. Israel prepared to. Israel knows it fully well that if the war expands, neighboring countries would be involved. So not a surprise for Israel, it was a surprise for US. Hezbollah in Lebanon is not under the influence of US. Bashar al-Assad in Syria is a close ally of Russia. Russia saved Bashar al-Assad. It was the Russian military which intervened to support Bashar al-Assad. Russian military is still in Syria, but American forces are there too in some areas. But mainly it is Russia which is supporting Bashar al-Assad's Syrian government. So it means that now we're seeing an alliance of pro-Russia countries in the Middle East against Israel, which is heavily backed by the US. US carrier strike group CSG on its way towards the Eastern Mediterranean. US military support already arriving in Israel. Let's hope this war comes to an end. The way it is expanding, it could engulf neighboring countries too. By the way, Bashar al-Assad was delivered a message from the UAE, reportedly. UAE tried to stop Bashar al-Assad from being part of the war. UAE is trying to mediate, but at the same time it is trying to be on Israel's side in terms of diplomatic support for Israel. UAE restored ties with Israel around 3 years ago, and UAE's embassy in Israel and Israeli embassy in UAE started working around 2 years ago. And UAE condemned Hamas's attack on Israel-controlled territories on Saturday. So Arab world is split, but Arab people of the Middle East, they overwhelmingly support Hamas. They overwhelmingly support Palestinian people, you can say. There was a big rally today in Jordan, Amman. Jordan shares border with Israel. It is not part of the conflict. It has taken a neutral stance. It is calling for de-escalation, calling for talks. It is not condemning Hamas. It is not condemning Israel. But there was a big rally in Jordan today in support of Palestinians. Same is the case with other Arab countries too. Leaders, they are, some are neutral, others are supporting Palestine to the extent of issuing statements, and some don't want to be seen as pro-Palestine, like the UAE. So this is the overall situation in the Middle East. We're seeing a bigger escalation now as Syria, Lebanon involved, Iran involved indirectly, US CSG arriving in the East Mediterranean close to Israeli and Gaza coast. Meanwhile, strikes continue. These minutes, strikes being conducted on Gaza. Gaza under full siege. If the siege goes on, how will people survive? Because Gaza has no outlet. Rafah border crossing closed. East Mediterranean being patrolled by Israeli warships. To the east there is Israel, to the north there is Israel. So where will people of Gaza go? From where will they get food? From where will they get medical supplies? Ambulances not being allowed to enter Gaza. UN, its operations in Gaza suspended. No UN convoy is being allowed to Gaza. UN has no access to Gaza. So how will people survive in Gaza? That remains to be seen. That is why maybe strong messages sent through these mortar firing, rocket firing, missile firing from Lebanese and Syrian territories. Meanwhile, 14 deaths have been confirmed by US government of their nationals in Israel. In this conflict, when Hamas fighters entered Israel-controlled territories, which they claim are illegally held, they attacked a concert where several foreigners were taken hostage by Hamas fighters. 14 have been killed 14 American nationals were killed in that attack by Hamas fighters. Some could be in detention too in Gaza, because when Hamas fighters kidnapped foreign nationals, they took them to Gaza. Germans, Italians and some French are also part of the group of foreigners which was kidnapped by Hamas fighters. Where are they? How are they? No one knows, because Gaza is being bombarded. Are hostages alive or have they been killed? No one knows. And Hamas has refused to exchange prisoners. It says prisoner exchange will happen after the war ends. So it wants to continue keeping the pressure on Western countries whose nationals it has held hostage. I have a clip for you of Russian President Putin. He met with Iraqi Prime Minister a few hours ago, and there he spoke about the escalation in the Middle East. He accused the US. He said it's a failure of US foreign policy, and saying the US is putting pressure upon both sides. It blackmails both sides. And he supported the establishment of a sovereign, fully independent Palestinian state. Putin is a relieved man, I think, now, because US, EU were focused on Ukraine, supporting Ukraine militarily. But now, obviously, it will be difficult for US and EU to support both Ukraine and Israel. So he would be relieved, and maybe we could see intensified Russian offensives against Ukrainian forces in Ukraine, while international community is focused on the Middle East now. Take a listen to what Putin said talking to Iraqi Prime Minister about the conflict in the Middle East. Thank you for watching.
Обострение ситуации на Ближнем Востоке. Я думаю, что многие согласятся со мной в том, что это яркий пример провала на политике Соединенных Штатов на Ближнем Востоке, которые пытались монополизировать урегулирование, но, к сожалению, не были озабочены поиском компромиссов, приемлемых для обеих сторон, а наоборот, выдвигая свои собственные представления о том, как это должно быть сделано, оказывали давление на обе стороны, именно на обе, то на одну, то на другую, но каждый раз без учета коренных интересов палестинского народа, имея в виду прежде всего необходимость реализации решений Совета Безопасности ООН о создании независимого суверенного палестинского государства. Но в любом случае, что бы там ни происходило, я Я знаю и вашу позицию, уважаемый господин премьер-министр, и наша позиция заключается в том, что ущерб гражданскому населению должен быть минимизирован и сведен к нулю. Причем мы призываем к этому все конфликтующие стороны.